I am really honored to join the discussion today. It's a conversation about wildlands and woodlands that I've been a part of for 25 years. And I just am here to give you a little context before the main show with John and Bob. So when I first joined the conservation field 25 years ago, I felt like I had walked in on an argument, a fight between two opposing sides under the title Wilderness versus Working Forest. And at its best, it was a good fight, a principled ideological debate, but other times it became pretty divisive. But fortunately, over the last decade, I have witnessed the discussion evolve to become a much more respectful dialogue that promotes understanding and effectiveness. And I think this is in large part thanks to Harvard Forests and David Foster's work to promote the Wildlands Woodlands vision. In my work as director of Kestrel and as a volunteer board member of the Northeast Wilderness Trust, I have chosen to embrace both woodlands and wildlands. I believe that they both can be healthy outcomes for the land, for water, for wildlife habitat, for recreation, and for climate. And I think we need both approaches if we're going to have a chance at realizing a larger vision to keep most of the forest in New England and the Northeast as forest.
Today's session is an outgrowth of conversations that John and I have been having around the table at the Wildlands and Woodlands group. Every few months, David Foster brings us together for conversations about where to go and how to map our path forward. And John and I got to know each other there. Our two organizations had a longer history and worked together, protecting land together.
Both organizations approached land conservation with different strategies, and some may say opposing strategies, but ultimately we are both trying to do the same thing, which is prevent forest conversion of private land around New England. You're going to hear Bob talk a lot about a systems approach to conservation, and we refer to this as a holistic approach, but the meaning is the same. Those that support wildlands and those that support managed woodlands must find common ground and work together to solve the twin crises of our time, which is climate change and biodiversity loss. And we are out of time, and that's why we're here talking together. We don't necessarily agree on everything, Bob and I, but that is okay. And that's the whole point of this conversation.
There's a spiritual, an ethical, emotional, some might call it a religious aspect to wilderness. It's what we feel in our heart. I think it's really important to us to acknowledge that and to kind of absorb that and make sure that we understand that's why it's important to protect wilderness, so that we can have a relationship with nature that's directly connected to nature and not filtered through changes in the land that we might make as human beings. I think that's essential, particularly in this day and age. So I put it number one, but it's not the only value. There's other reasons. There's four more. One of them is the pure science value. If we want to understand the world, if we want to understand nature, we have to be able to leave it alone a little bit and just observe it, be able to measure it, see what it does without any other interaction to it. And that makes us understand what the world is all about. And that's an unfiltered view of it. So just for that reason, it's important to have land that we can look at. Another reason for it is we need to use wilderness to protect certain wildlife and biodiversity. They need to be left alone, some species. They need not to be interrupted. And we're able to identify some of them that have these wildlife requirements, these habitat requirements. And we need to provide them the places, particularly in a time of climate change, where it's going to be tougher for them. So we know something, and there's a lot of things we don't know. There are a lot of species we haven't identified yet, let alone understanding what their requirements are to survive. And so we just need to leave land alone so that they have a chance until we can figure all that out. So that's another reason to protect wildlife. The other one is a practical utilitarian reason. It has to do with forestry. We need to be able to study the natural world untouched in order to understand how we can manage it when we do decide to step in and manage it. We do different things with forests and use different techniques, but we don't really understand them well until we see how a forest functions without us doing anything. So that helps us become better forest managers. That's directly linked to forestry. We need those lands left aside. And the last one, the fifth one, is I just call it joy, enjoyment. It's about recreation. It's getting out there on the land and hiking and skiing and maybe being alone, maybe, as they say, being in a place where you can get lost, where you can find yourself by getting lost. All those different activities that's, purely for our own personal use and own personal enjoyment, but we love them. And I think they're important, and they should be available to everybody in our society. We hear a lot of talk now and focus about diversity and inclusion and justice. And I know a lot of groups and people are focusing on that. Making sure our natural lands are available and people are comfortable going there is something we need to do some more thinking about and be better at. But these lands that we're setting aside are for everybody, for all time, for all future generations. So those are my 5 reasons why I love wilderness, why I've spent my career supporting it, why NEF supports Newt, why NEF supports more reserves, and why we have this partnership with John.
For the foreseeable future, whether good or bad, you and I will continue to use wood products every single day. Cardboard boxes, household paper, building materials, furniture, sporting equipment. These are all, of course, made of trees. So I ask, where should tree resources come from and how should we procure them? To me, the answer is that this resource should be procured as ecologically sustainable as possible and ideally as local as possible. We can either pretend that we aren't doing harm elsewhere while using wood products, or we can choose to get these products from our own backyard right here in the Northeast, ideally using the highest standards possible with land trusts like New England Forestry Foundation leading the way. And at the same time, we should ensure that the wood grown in New England is used here in New England. And as Bob will present, cutting trees carefully with great respect for the forests in which they're grown and for the creatures that call those places home, and importantly, using those wood products wisely is an incredible complementary conservation strategy to wildlands conservation. And this can help solve climate change. Does that mean that all forestry is perfect and it's exactly the same? No, of course it doesn't. But not all forestry practices are equal. And I believe, and I'm a supporter of NEF's exemplary forestry standard. And I think it should be a model that we try to expand, and one, again, that I personally support. Like many, I have gone out of my way to reduce virgin wood products from my daily life, and especially at Northeast Wilderness Trust. But as one example, as Bob alluded to, I burn wood for heat. I personally love felling trees in the forest behind my house, and I love being kept warm throughout the long Vermont winter with those trees. And I think it's unarguably the most local and affordable heat source available to me. And while for me, it's a privilege and a choice that I make to burn wood for heat, for many across New England, keeping warm with wood is an economic necessity and, again, a better local solution than burning oil or propane. So I use that one example, and there are, of course, many, to make a simple point, and it's not to make myself out to be a hypocrite. The point is that no matter your love for wild places and the unquestionable value of those places, and the urgent need to protect exponentially more wild places, we live in a world that uses wood products. And I do believe that there should be a shift in the consumption of wood, but wood is and will remain a useful product. And I thus believe that we need to procure it as wisely as we can and use it as wisely as we can. You can learn more about what Bob and Neff and me and Newt are working on at our respective websites, and I hope you'll join the effort to conserve more wildlands and more exemplary managed woodlands across New England. Thank you so much for listening.